If you want to continue to follow our adventure, click subscribe. So you don't miss anything, click the bell notification. Made a video, I don't know, a little over 2 months ago, and it has become my most popular video. And it's Campground Stalkers, I think is the title of it. I was talking about how if you start to stay extended periods in a campground, and I mean extended periods like a week, the local community really starts to take notice that you're there. They'll come and really start glaring at you or come and ask you questions. They want to know that their area, their community is safe. Well, just the other day, I made a very similar video. Except this time when I was instead of talking about national forests and campgrounds, I was talking about van dwelling in city limits on streets. And I made a very close connection between the two. That communities don't want to see creepy vans on their streets. It worries them. Just as much as it does those folks who drive by the national forest, it worries them. The only difference between the two videos is that if you're in a national forest, it takes about a week before folks start to notice you. But in the city, it takes about one night. So when I made this video about van dwelling in the city, very poor response. But if you look at what YouTubers are saying about this lifestyle, and you really pay attention, you get through the fluff, you're going to start to see that they're always running into issues. People coming out and harassing you, whether it's police officers or rangers or community members, calling you in. If you watch, it's out there. They're just hiding it behind a bunch of fluff because they want you to watch your video. Well, I mean, you know that my channel doesn't grow very fast because I don't hide behind the fluff. This is just the reality of the lifestyle, and I want to expose it for what it is. But this last video I made, I got a lot of negative feedback. They just didn't want to accept that living in a van on the street just isn't allowed in a lot of cities. I talked about that you do have a right to live in your van. That is true. But you don't have a right to live in a van in the street. Because you see these YouTubers, they get so frustrated that they're getting picked on, but they continuously fight the system, and the system keeps winning. Look, when I first started this lifestyle, I did get the knock on the door several times. And over time, I realized, I got to really do better research. In the city, we were visiting Carolyn's daughter, in the truck camper actually, and we'd been there a couple days visiting, and apparently the neighbors were getting a little suspicious about what was going on in our camper, so of course they called the police. Well, heck, the police officer didn't even know the laws. He said, well, I'm going to have to go and look up the laws to see if you can sleep in your camper. And I kept insisting that we weren't. While he was gone, I looked up the rules, and you're not allowed to be on city streets with a camper, an RV. Fortunately, our truck, and this is just luck, that's all it was, is not considered a camper because it's a built camper considered cargo. So since then, I do nothing but research. And since then, I have not been harassed by law enforcement or community members because I insist on trying to follow the rules of the community. People keep saying, I want to be free, I want to come out here, I want to live this lifestyle free, and then they get harassed by the police officers and they say, well, they're taking my freedoms away. And I tried to explain this in the last video, and somehow it just did not make a connection. When your rights, when your freedoms interfere with someone else's freedoms, then things are going to happen. People are going to disagree. Believe it or not, this is just the way of life. People don't want people living in their vans in front of their houses. And no matter how much you try to avoid that thought, it is just the reality of the lifestyle. If you think about a van in front of your house, think about this. A burglar is scoping out your house, learning when you leave and come back, understanding your routines. And then he can break into your house, steal all your stuff, and put it in the van. So it's not just, oh, well, there's some guy sleeping in his van outside. No, there's some guy in a van, and I feel like maybe he's going to try to do harm to me. I've always grown up in small towns. So if there was a suspicious car in the community, I knew about it. You know, you see people driving down the road, you're like, huh, I've never seen that car before. And when I say small communities, most of middle America is small communities. You know, just the other day, there was a camper that came down here, and she didn't want to stay in the established campground. She wanted to be off by herself. So she moved down into the corner of the campground, which is actually kind of like a parking area, and she started camping there. Well, the ranger came down and told her to move into the established camping area. And in my mind, the whole time I was thinking, why wouldn't she have just moved into the established camping area anyways? Why push the idea that the ranger is going to come knock on your door and tell you to move, when you could have just simply done it correctly the first time? And then when she's told to move, she doesn't get mad at herself. She's mad at the ranger for knocking on her door and telling her to move. There's just this common sense idea that if you're going to do something, you have to consider how everybody else is going to react to what you're doing. Because we live in a society of people, and people have opinions on how things should be done. And in this national forest, at this campground, they have an opinion that you need to park your camper in the established campground. You know, the one with the picnic tables and the fire rings. Not over there in the parking lot area. So if you want to avoid getting angry at the YouTuber who's telling you the truth, and you want to avoid getting angry at the rangers and the police officers, just follow society's established guidelines, and you'll have a lot of success out here. Otherwise, you're always going to be getting the knock on the door. Thanks for watching. Click like if you like the video, and happy travels.